Welcome to the virtual lunch. Today is Monday, January 11th, and this is virtual lunch number 215. I am honored today that Eric Elfman, the founder and CEO of Onit, has joined. And Onit is the sponsor of a series of digital transformation conversations, and we have a whole bunch of Onit folks on, and I'm excited to be talking about this.
I've been around the legal industry for a lot of years. I studied business instead of law for grad school, but was really drawn to the legal industry. But I didn't really want to go to work in a law firm. Knew I was going to start a business at some point, but didn't have the idea. But I was confident getting out of grad school in 95 that no matter what industry you go into, if your mind is set to finding something to optimize, to make better, to found a company on, that you would find it because it exists everywhere you look if that's what your mindset is. So stumbled into litigation consulting. And so it was very boring work, crawling through old boxes of papers that were 10 years old in El Paso, Texas. It was not elegant work, but really trying to piece together a story from old data in defense of some argument. But it was that experience that gave me the epiphany that helped launch DataCert, my first company, which I founded in 1998. And so we were consulting to a Fortune 5 company at the time. And I was listening to a conversation with this associate general counsel about all of the outside law firms that they use around the globe. And it started to occur to me why there were so many rich lawyers and so many law firms in the world. And so I asked what I thought was an innocent question, which was, how much does X spend every year on outside law firms? And the AGC kind of shrugged his shoulders and said somewhere between $400 and $600 million a year. And I was like, oh, light bulb. If $400 to $600 million is a shrug of the shoulders, maybe there's some room for some business discipline here. And then started digging in. The reality of why they don't know is most of those bills were paper. While there were outside counsel guidelines in the bottom of every Fortune 500 legal department's drawers, no one was using them to validate those guidelines were really being complied with them. And so that was the epiphany for DataCert. And so look, I left DataCert after 10 years. We had sold a big stake to Wolters Kluwer, who eventually bought the rest of the company, and ultimately decided that what I am is an entrepreneur. I start stuff and I'm an accidental CEO. I don't want to be someone else's CEO. And so decided that's what I wanted to do. But again, like DataCert, I didn't have the idea. But ultimately, I partnered with my CTO, co-founder of DataCert, Eric Smith. We put a little money in a company with no idea until we eventually came upon another epiphany, which is despite all of the big enterprise class software that legal departments are giving their lawyers, the majority of the work that lawyers were actually doing was outside of those systems. They were emailing, they were having phone conversations, they were running all of their processes outside of the framework of a matter management system. And legal departments were telling these lawyers, hey, after you go do that lawyer stuff you do, type in your notes in the system so the general counsel will know what happened. And it wasn't working, right? We all knew the dirty secret of matter management and enterprise legal management, that lawyers really didn't want to use the system other than to pay a bill. So the epiphany at Onit was, hey, let's fill in the gaps of the enterprise software like matter management, document management, contract management. Let's help with all of those other things that lawyers do that they're having to use email for, which makes email your knowledge management system instead of the messaging tool that it should be. And so what Onit is, and what we kind of the only thing we are, is a no-code workflow platform. With a last 5% of configuration, it's 95% of the solution for any process that you could throw at it. We've automated hundreds of different workflows over the years. From our customers' perspective, we're 4 main products: enterprise legal management, contract lifecycle management, legal holds, as well as our customers license our platform called Aptitude to write their own solutions or have their consulting partners write solutions as well. So what we did is say it's not project managers that lawyers are, it's process managers, whether it's managing a litigation, a set of interrogatories, an IP filing, a contract process. These are all processes. So lawyers are really process people. They're managing processes as part of their day. So don't try and teach them how to be project managers. The build versus buy, one of the things I find is you have to be honest what your core competence is and who you are as an organization. And today, Onit is just under 400 people that really know ELM most and gaining a competence in CLM on top of our no-code workflow platform. So when we said we have got to get in the AI space, mainly in the context of our contract lifecycle management product first, but eventually bringing it back to ELM, we knew that we weren't AI people. So the idea that we would write something from scratch was never even a viable option. So it really comes down to time to value and time to market.
Should you, if you're a company, try to align yourself with an existing space that's crowded or to redefine a space?
It's a tough one because you look at ELM, we went into an old world, and I would argue we didn't bring a better mousetrap. What we brought was a different mousetrap. All of enterprise software is broken. There's $500 billion spent every year on enterprise software. And at the end of the day, most of that enterprise software is database centric. They start with a database. Where are you going to store the little bits of information? And then what's the user layer? And then you ask your users to go hand enter this data. I think enterprise class users, knowledge workers are really process workers. So on one very real level, I feel the entire enterprise software market is ripe for disruption. You got to be practical. All we really know is legal. And so we are practicing that disruption in the legal industry where there's not a lot of brand new stuff that we can bring to bear. E-discovery is not new. Legal holds aren't new. Contracts aren't new. Matters aren't new. Billing isn't new. So we've chosen an industry where what we have to do is bring better tools to bear. So we have chosen a path where we're trying to make the lives better in typically older segments. Contract lifecycle management feels new to us, but there's probably 150 vendors operating around that space. CLM funding was through the roof in 2020, but when the history books are written for 2020, you would have expected the stock market to take a bigger hit. You'd have expected VC and private equity to go to the floor. The reality is the opposite. It was probably a record year of investing in venture capital and private equity because of all of the money that was sitting on the sidelines. So that didn't slow down. As a result, valuations for tech firms is through the roof. Who would have ever guessed that through COVID, where top line business is being damaged, and our top line business was less last year than it otherwise could have been, that valuations are through the roof. And so, yes, bad companies are getting funded. All of these CLM companies cannot win. The overwhelming majority will lose. The people are spreading their money into that space. There are a lot of great companies that get funded and are bootstrapped. Arguably, DataCert was bootstrapped for the first 2 years because I didn't know how to raise money in 1998. Despite it being the dot-com boom, I had to go learn those skills. So our first funding was from our first 5 Fortune 500 customers who took a chance on the right idea at the right time with a super tiny team. Once we had some valuable proof points, we were able to raise money. I mean, from our customers' perspective, the only way you're going to get innovation is by having companies like us and their investors take risks and invest money long before you can actually plot the path to profitability. And I did promise myself, after having lived through the dot-com crash, that the next time there's a bubble like that, I want to be in the right position at the right time. There's a bubble here. It's not quite the same. I call this a private equity bubble as opposed to an IPO bubble or a public markets bubble. It was really those public markets that were driving all that craziness at the time. Now it's private equity where the valuations are just as big, but it's more limited in scope. Although if you look at some of the public valuations of these companies that went public last year, it is starting to smell like the dot-com boom. But we always ask ourselves, is this the year we try and expand into to fintech or sales tech or ed tech? And every year we say, look how fast we can grow by sticking to exactly what we know. And so we've stayed home in the legal industry. To get as big as I think this idea would allow us to, we've got to become a multi-vertical company where we're replicating these products in finance departments or HR departments or sales departments. Because guess what? they are no better served by technology or workflow than legal departments are today. So what's next? It's continuing to focus on legal for the next 2 years as we're figuring out how to start to expand in other verticals and replicate the legal experience elsewhere.
Eric Elfman, great job.